Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe, joined by CJ Vogel. Got some team notes to talk about heading into the weekend. CJ, you posted some team notes on Friday over at ontexasfootball.com. Let's get to the first one, which, look, we can't talk about Arch Manning enough in his recovery from the preventative foot procedure that he had in January. He's been active for about a week now out of the boot. How's QB1 progressing as we zero in on spring practice?
Yeah, that's the most important part of this, right? Out of the boot, beginning to move around more. Again, how much will we see of Arch to begin the spring, I think is, the big question. Right now, I would anticipate seeing a lot of KJ Lacey with the first-team offense, behind that first-team offensive line in general. Texas, obviously, we know this. We're not going to beat a dead horse here, Jeff, but they're not going to rush Arch Manning back. They know how talented he is. The big thing is, hey, he is starting to throw with Cam Coleman. He is starting to throw with Sterling Burkhalter and some of the freshmen that are on campus as well, of course, building that rapport with Ryan Wingo and Emmett Mosley and Khalil Lockett. So that is a positive. I anticipate we really start to see Arch ramp up his participation in spring practice after the spring break, right? Remember, Texas will have the 3 practices next week beginning March 9th, and then they will have a week absent going on spring break. And then when they return, that March 23rd week, Jeff, that's when I really anticipate seeing more of Arch Manning when the pads get on, and 2, when his foot has 2.5 more weeks to fully heal up.
And just to reiterate the practice schedule again, they'll go Monday, Wednesday, Friday next week. As CJ said, break for spring break. And then when they come back, it's Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, all the way up to the spring game on April 18th. CJ, team building, something that we talked a lot about, and Sark mentioned it in the press conference he had a couple of weeks ago now. And I thought it was, accountability on his part to say, hey, I didn't have this team where I needed to have it in terms of the culture building process. Just took too long to implement it. But CJ, along with Culture Wednesdays coming back a little earlier than you otherwise would have implemented him, making that change year over year, been some team building, I guess we won't call them exercises, we'll call them gatherings leading up to spring practice as this team wraps up off his winter conditioning.
Yeah, no, and Sark talked about that 2 weeks ago. He said, look, I got to be better at getting this team together earlier, right? It's one thing to work out. There's multiple workout sessions for guys who have morning classes, for guys that are older and come in with the veteran group. So look, right now, that's kind of what Texas is doing behind the scenes, is to build that camaraderie and that trust and that rapport in the locker room. And that involves position groups going out with other position groups. And, they'll certainly switch up as the weeks continue. But look, a couple of position groups were out this past Wednesday. I know that the offensive line and the running backs went bowling. There were some heated bowls down the lanes there with Melvin Ciani, obviously Raleek Brown, Hollywood Smothers, Connor Robertson. Look, everybody was out there competing, but all in good fun, right? And that's kind of what you're hoping and anticipating to come out of this winter conditioning side of things. And then on the flip side, the defensive backs, the corners and the safeties. Well, I'm actually surprised, Jeff, that the offensive line didn't end up with this team building exercise. They went to Terry Black's, and for folks who have been in Austin, have visited, who have walked down and ate at Terry Black's, I think that's a pretty good team-building exercise of its own right. But, yeah, you start to see that these guys are getting closer with one another, and, of course, they'll soon be going against one another for 15 practices. Right now, things are trending in the right direction in terms of locker room building and team building on the backside.
You mentioned the DBs. We'll talk about a couple of those guys from a newcomer standpoint here in just a minute. But CJ, one other note, I just think it's worth mentioning, Wednesday and Thursday for this team, actually Thursday night and Friday morning, equipment issue, guys getting fitted for shoulder pads and helmets. So it's here. If you needed another reminder, the newcomers getting fitted for their gear, we're right here as we get into spring practice. We talked a lot about it on the, give me one thing, at least from the opening week, that you expect to hear, want to hear. What's something just in the first week that's top of mind for you?
Yeah, well, going back just a little bit, getting shoulder pads, helmets, everything to fit right. I'm told that that's obviously a big priority, so that Monday morning there's no wasted time. There's no equipment manager stops. You're not sitting there saying, hey, my cleats don't fit. I got a poke in my pad or whatever it is, right? They're getting in Monday and ready to rock and roll. Big priority for the Texas team. But there's also been some player-led workouts, and obviously coaches cannot be on the field to instruct, but they can monitor. And from what I understand, the players have had plenty of this is what practice will look like sort of walkthroughs. And so what I anticipate hearing is ultimately your offensive line is going to look pretty different. And what I mean by that is Jordan Coleman likely to be your starting left tackle before Trevor Gooseby gets back. Left guard will be Jaden Chapman, and then Connor Robertson at center, Brandon Baker making the bump into right guard, and Melvin Siani at right tackle. So look, new faces across the board, basically at every position except for Connor Robertson. So what does that offensive line look like to start? That's going to be something that I'm really interested to hear about. But altogether, that left side, Jeff, when it comes to Jordan Coleman, who we've heard some positives about, especially in terms of how his body has transformed this offseason, and obviously Jaden Chapman fighting for a spot before Andre Kojo comes back, before Dylan Sikorsky gets, kind of in the know with the offense as well. That's going to be the big point of emphasis.
Yep. Lawrence Seymour, also a possibility to get on campus this summer if his waiver plays out with the NCAA. And like you said, nobody should scoff or look down on those kind of walkthrough scenarios or what to expect scenarios. When you turn over half your roster, more than half your roster, there'll be a lot of guys going through with Steve Sarkisian practice for the first time. So I'd expect to see a lot of looking around, expecting what's going on. A big day for the vets to kind of carry a little bit. CJ, as we wrap this up, I mentioned the corners. One of those corners was in terms of guys that stood out in winter conditioning from a testing standpoint. You mentioned Smoke Matthews. I don't think anybody should be surprised by that. Cohen Brown, Jermaine Bishop. I don't think anybody would be surprised to know that either. But you even mentioned this. The guy that's really been an eye-opener in terms of what he's brought to the table from an athleticism standpoint with his testing numbers, Hayward Howard Jr. I don't know that a lot of people were counting on him to be maybe a frontline guy, but CJ, he's generated a lot of positive buzz for himself since he got to campus.
Yeah, he certainly has. And again, you go back and you look at some of the marquee names in the class, and I'm not sure he's included, but all he's done is win multiple state championships at Edna Carr in the highest classification. And he comes in, he's only 17 years old, Jeff, and he will be 17 until about mid-July. So take into account, he is very young, and yet we're already hearing his testing numbers are great. His speed is fantastic. He's finishing top of the group for that cornerback and safeties room pretty often in terms of relative speed as well. So, that is a huge positive and a plus, and he's doing this all around 6'3" and some change. So a very toolsy prospect. Now it's about Mark Orfe kind of instilling that physicality, making sure that he is technically sound. Spring could ultimately end up being a place where he earns some time. And again, I'm not sure many expected that exiting winter conditioning, but right now the testing numbers for him, for Samari Matthews, we've obviously heard some good things about Teray Davis all the way around, but this freshman secondary room, a lot to like so far.
Yeah, at the very least, those size speed ratio guys, that'll play on special teams.
Yeah.
And we'll get a look at the newcomers, but if that picture that's been making its way around with Jamarian Carlton, just looking at the size and strength gains he's made in a couple of weeks he's been on campus, should be a pretty good-looking group on the hoof when we get to spring practice, which starts on Monday. CJ, thank you for the knowledge and expertise as always. If you want more of CJ's notes or want more from the On Texas Football staff, get over to ontexasfootball.com and check it out. Anytime we drop news, notes, or nuggets, we're dropping it there first. So make sure you get over to the site and check out what we've got. Make sure that you like this video and that you're subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel. That way, whenever we drop a video or go live, you're not missing any of our Longhorn coverage. For CJ, for Matthew behind the scenes producing it, and for the entire On Texas Football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And until next time, hook 'em.